Bless you. I have worked as a comedian for the last 26 years, and it's a good job, as jobs go. I mean, granted, the half-hour days are crippling, but it's not a bad gig. I thoroughly recommend being a comedian to anyone who wants to completely disappoint their parents. In my case, my dad was a doctor, both my brothers went to law school, and so no pressure in that family, you know? Oh, and what does your other son do? Oh, he's a clown. But it's been a rewarding career. It's been a good career because not only is it a reward to make people laugh and to make people happy all the time, but it's also a fascinating subject. I've always wanted to take it apart like a little watch and figure out how it worked. And about 14 years ago, I started teaching stand-up. And it's a very odd subject to teach because when you tell people you teach comedy, they almost deny whether that's even possible. They'll say, well, how do you even do that? Because comedy is a very mystified process. People are like, well, you know, it's, you know, people have their sense of humor and no one knows. It's mystery. We don't know. But it's not necessary. It doesn't have to be a mystery. I think that, you know, the more I look at humor, the more I've come to realize that while there are some forms of humor that are very multi-layered and are very complex, there are also simple, fundamental tools and devices that are used in the creation of humor that we can isolate and understand. Simple things like repetition would be a good example. Alliteration would be an example. Exaggeration would be a good example. Anthropomorphing would be a good example. Anthropomorphing, which is giving human characteristics to anything that is not human. The comic power of which is illustrated well by this particular cartoon by my good friend Gray Jolliffe. There you go. Took you a second. You were wondering if it was okay to laugh, weren't you? Are we allowed? It's TED. But I've isolated thousands of these wonderful little things, and I feel that they have the potential for tremendous benefit. Because humor is something that is a universal. It exists in every society, in every culture, and it's been around longer than the spoken word. The first person who ever laughed was able to laugh because they were born with some odd genetic anomaly that caused them to have this noisy convulsion in response to a particular type of physical stimulus, tickling. Right? And they must have seemed a bit of an odd person because it's an odd thing, laughter. I often think that when I'm doing stand-up. I'll see a room full of people in front of me and I'll think, well, they've paid cash to be in a dark room full of strangers and share in this kind of noisy convulsion, this kind of, you know. And they want more. They're going, can I have another, please? Thank you. We crave it because laughter is its own reward. It helps produce endorphins. It helps boost our production of T cells. It helps to boost up our immune system. It helps in the production of oxytocin, which is a hormone that is generally credited with being the primary neurochemical source of human bonding, empathy, and love. It's also the most infectious human vocalization. When you hear laughter, you actually fire off exactly the same neurons in your brain as when you do laugh. Exactly the same. Neurons that function this way are called mirror neurons, and they are generally credited as being the primary neurological source of human bonding and empathy. So you have this rich package, and as we're talking all about it, we might as well share a little bit of it right now. Might as well have a little bit of laughter. In this particular video clip, which is almost playing now, a loving father is ripping up a job rejection notice in front of his son. 56 million hits on YouTube. That has 56 million hits. We are hooked, all right? And gradually through play, we figured out ways of creating laughter without having to use tickling. At first, it would have been after a good tickle, and you had that moment where you were expecting another one to happen, but it didn't quite happen. You know, that unexpected movement, that sharp, surprising movement, that break in the pattern. That's the first joke right there. Right? It's breaks in patterns that are at the root of what humor actually is. The classic slipping on a banana peel, that's exactly what's going on. You have the pattern of someone walking and then all of a sudden, you know, that's the pattern that gets broken. That's what the baby was experiencing in that video. That's what's going on there, is it's seeing the paper originally as a singular object of a specific shape that's completely silent. All of a sudden, it's making noise and it's transforming into all kinds of different shapes. It's this breaking of patterns that's at the root of humor. And when we started to see breaks in patterns, this was a fundamental moment in the evolution of human cognition. Because in order to see a break in a pattern, you have to be able to see the pattern itself. So all of a sudden, what we have here is a pattern recognition system that's being rewarded by laughter. And it helped us to look at the outside world and to organize it and compartmentalize it inside our own minds. For the first time in our history, we were no longer just hunting for food, we were hunting for ideas. And laughter also is something that is communicating something. It's a form of communication. When you hear somebody laugh, you know more about their physical state, their mental state, and their opinion of what they've just experienced. So we have communication, and we have the organization of information. Here, we have the building blocks of language. At least that's what I thought at first. And then I was watching a lecture that was delivered by a University of Toronto professor named Bob Logan. And in it, he gave the following definition of language. Communication plus informatics equals language. Informatics meaning the organization of information. So, according to this definition, language, or humor rather, humor and laughter as a two-part system, as a bipartite system, they weren't the building blocks of our first language, they were our first language. Humor and laughter were humankind's first language. And because it was a language that was driven by wanting to find breaks in patterns, it automatically fused that desire to find things that are changing, things that are altering. It made us crave novelty. We as a species are unique in that we love change, we seek change, we want change. That's why every spring there are new spring fashions. That's why some people get divorced. We crave change. We want this change. And humor as a system created human beings to be a species that wish for it and wish to actually evolve themselves. But as fascinating as the theory is, I find that it's putting it into practice that really matters. That's really what counts. And knowing how to put it into practice. Knowing that if a teacher, for example, is using humor in the right way, they can grab the attention of their class, they can hold the attention of their class, they can deliver new and fascinating ideas in interesting ways, and they can have that class wanting to come back for more. It's particularly important in the teaching of second languages because humor helps to point out the nuance. You know, all the nuances of language. For example, if a word has 4 or 5 different meanings, that's a classic device in humor. Humor also helps to bond us together, to bring us together. Because what's one of the first things we do when we have an enemy is we deny their sense of humor. In the last 20 years, there have been a lot of people questioning whether there's any sense of humor in the Muslim world. And 70 years ago, people were saying exactly the same thing about the Germans and the Japanese. They have no sense of humor. They have no sense of humor. Right? To deny somebody's humor is to deny their humanity. To investigate their humor is to investigate their humanity. And because we instinctively know how important humor is, we teach it to our children at a very early age. And it's important also that as stewards of new technologies that are evolving, that we teach humor to the technologies that are up and coming. We need to have humor within cell phones, to have humor within computers, to have humor within robots. And that's what I'm working on presently, are systems that will allow your cell phone, for example, because these can work with either motion or with speech, and speech is going to become increasingly the way that things work. You're going to be talking to your phone as much as you're going to be talking through your phone in the future. And with the systems that I'm developing, your phone will be able to hear you speak, will know when you're using humor, and will be able to react accordingly. You'll have a little giggling cell phone. It will also be able to create humor for you and detect which humor you like and don't like and adapt to it and be able to evolve humor. It will get to know you. Your phone will get to know you and you will get to know your phone. I hope that within my lifetime, I get to actually hear somebody say, well, you don't know me like my phone knows me. I was flying back from Winnipeg this last February because I have such a good agent. And I was sitting next to an elderly woman, and I spent the whole flight showing her, giving her a tour of my iPad and showing her what she could do with it and what she could learn from it, and she was fascinated. And then I told her that what I was working on, and she was excited. She was like, ooh, so it'll be like a little friend. And I said, that's exactly it. That's exactly what it'll be. It'll be like a little friend. And she said, well, that's wonderful, you know, because people in my generation, we spend a lot of time alone. And it's true. Even now, there are robots working in elder care. And robots like these should definitely have some kind of system of humor within them. Robots are particularly important because we have an instinctive fear of robots. So while we're developing all these systems of mind and systems of body for robots, to me, it's essential that we also create systems of humanity. We have to tickle the Terminator. We have to create a future that has more communication, that has more laughter, that has more bonding, that has more creativity. We have to realize that technology is not something simply that's designed to strip away our humanity, but it's actually an opportunity for us to spread our humanity in ways that were previously unthinkable. And when this happens, humor will have managed to pull off its great trick and done what it's always wanted to do, which is to help us evolve as a species. Thank you. Oh.